Hi, it's Monday, it's 3 o'clock. Welcome to Together Unlocked, brought to you as always by Together 2012. We're a disabled led arts organisation based in the main Paralympic host borough of Newham. And today, as always on a Monday, we have a rich programme of content. I believe at the other end of our virtual wheeled sofa, they are not managing to get their microphones off mute. So I'm just going to take it off. Thank you for that sign language. I would have taken your microphones off mute before I introduced you, but as it is, let's go to the other end of the virtual wheeled sofa to the West Midlands for some introductions and audio description, and then come back to East London and we'll introduce ourselves, give you a bit of audio description, and tell you more about what's in today's show.
Okay, so fingers crossed we have a nice sound coming through. Do let us know otherwise. We've just had a couple of technical moments literally in countdown. So, good afternoon. I'm Robin Surgeoner. I am a business director at Together 2012 and Tech Fool. It's a sunny day today, actually, up here in Sutton Coldfield at the moment, which is great. So today I am wearing my lengthening silvery grey hair with one black strand I found the other day, which was very exciting. I've got blue eyes behind no-rimmed black-armed glasses. I'm not shaven, unashamedly so. And today I'm wearing my new favourite hoodie, which is a light grey hooded sweatshirt with Team GB in grey letters, and then some characters which we believe are Japanese, hopefully saying, well, no idea what they say, but it's a Team GB t-shirt for Tokyo anyway.
Hi, I'm Josh Surgeoner. I'm also a host of Together Unlocked, and I'm a PhD student. I have rather long blonde hair. I'm also not very shaven, and then today I'm wearing a.
Robin, to take that sound down slightly.
I'm wearing a long, fleecy black turtleneck that has kind of grey tassely drawstring thingies hanging off the front. And I did start learning Japanese, but it's not good enough yet to be able to read the Japanese alphabet for the letters for words taken from other languages. It's very complicated when you start learning Japanese. There's kind of 2 or 3 different alphabets, so it gets
I mean, this is a complete aside, but I was fascinated when I visited South Korea that the shapes of, to somebody from the West who doesn't know, the shapes look very like the Japanese alphabet, but they're actually in Korean, it's the shapes that the tongue makes in the mouth. And I mean, it was an alphabet that was invented by a medieval king so that the peasants could read. I thought that was wonderful that, so many hundreds of years ago, South Korea was still really interested in getting literacy to everybody. But I'm Ju Gosling, also known as the artist Ju90. I'm artistic director of Together 2012. And what do I look like? Well, I'm a white woman with pale olive skin. I have green eyes behind black plastic glasses and black wrist braces. I have a self-styled hennaed corona crop in a grey underneath a grey trilby hat. I decided this was the year of the hats. And today I'm wearing a long sleeved black t shirt with a silver heart that sort of starts as one heart and then there's more and more hearts go out, and it says in the middle, all you need is, well, love, presumably. And to go with that, my jewelry includes a heart shaped pendant and gold stud heart shaped earrings. I just felt it was one of those weeks, and yes, it'd be one of those weekends where it's nice just to say, yes, all we need is love. Behind me, you can see a glimpse of our Together 2012 graffiti banner, which we created with a company called Graffiti Life back in 2014. And that's got images of all of the different art forms we cover in a year, from drama, dance, and other types of performance to photography, filmmaking, street art, live music, live art, circus art, and much, much more. Today, being Monday, we're going to focus on photography and film. We're also going to have our regular weekly app date, where today, among other things, we're going to look at personal safety apps. And because it's a Monday, we finish with a meditation, Relax with Awa, where Awa Jagnay, who's a young member of our associate drama company, Act Up Newham, has a yoga channel which she puts a new stream up every Saturday, and we just hop in for the last 5 minutes on a Monday. So all of that's coming up. But next, Julie, who are you? What do you look like?
Hi, I'm Julie Newman. I'm the chair of Together. I have gold and silver hair, which is now abounding because it keeps growing and it has not been cut. Today I'm wearing I like to think of it as cerise, what I call cerise, little sailing fleece with green borders and a little green bordered zip pocket on the left hand side, and a white t-shirt underneath, and I'm wearing assorted cats at different times. There's a little black fluffy cat who keeps bouncing up, and there's a little black and brown and grey tabby with green eyes.
Yes, I think the only comment we had on YouTube last week was more cats, please. We can't really do anything about the cats. They just come and go. But the longer we're locked down with no visitors, which is over a year now, the happier they get when they hear other people's voices coming out of the computer and rush over to be admired. If you go to our website, www.together2012.org.uk, and go to the Together Unlocked TV page, linked from there and also available through the pull down menu is our highlights and links page, where we'll be posting details of everything we talk about today. But there's also a page called Animal Hosts, where you can find out about the various cats in the West Midlands, East London, over as well, of course, with Julia, who's doing our live captions. And then, of course, we have the assistance dogs, Precious, Merlot, and Jazz, two of whom actually do camera work for us. So if you'd like more cats, then go over to the Animal Hosts page, or just keep waiting, because more will wander on soon. In fact, there was a bit of a fight going on in front of the monitor on Friday. At one point, I thought the whole thing was going to crash down, but mercifully, it was quite a quiet scuffle. So on a Friday, we flag up something for the weekend, where we look at things you can do from home, online and offline, mostly based around the arts, with a bit of sport thrown in, but sometimes a bit broader as well. So, Josh, what did you do at the weekend? What did you enjoy watching?
So we watched, we talked about it a little bit before, the series WandaVision on Disney Plus, and me being a rather large Marvel fan and nerd, and kind of roped these lot into watching it as well. But they've started, I say it's a new series, I think they're going to come out fairly infrequently, but something called, it's like Marvel Studios Assembled. It's a play on Avengers Assembled, the film. And it's basically their specials, they're making of specials for their different series and films. So I imagine there'll be one that comes out, after a film comes out, kind of thing. It's not a week to week thing. So the first one is in relation to WandaVision. And it's really, really interesting, because you get to kind of, they're interviewing the actors, they're interviewing the producers, the directors, the special effects people, the music people. So it's really interesting to kind of learn more from that. I enjoy that sort of stuff. It's really interesting. But the level that they went to try and get authenticity in it was really interesting. So without spoiling it, the premise of it is that each episode is set in a different era of sitcoms. So the first episode is it's set in the 1950s kind of sitcom. So they filmed it all in black and white. It was all what would normally be special effects in a Marvel film and things flying around. They all did it on wires. But like the crew got dressed up in 1950s outfits, and they kind of spoke, because it's based on the Dick Van Dyke Show, they spoke to Dick Van Dyke. How did you film it? What did you do? What was the set like? And basically filmed it as like a live theatre performance, because that's how it was done on that show. And because they're replicating that show, essentially, they filmed it like that. And I just thought it was really interesting that they went to that. They didn't have to do any of that at all, but they went to that level to do it.
I mean, yeah, I was just going to say, without giving anything away, really, in terms of the storyline, but for those that are old enough, there was also one that was Bewitched, and obviously Bewitched, if you knew the show, and
Yeah.
then one that was the Brady Bunch. And I mean, that's and it was done that well that the setting told you that. It was really good.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And then also things like, for the people that don't know who Vision is, he's played by Paul Bettany, so he's a 6 foot something red robot android man. So for the first couple of episodes that are filmed in black and white, you can't have red in black and white. It just doesn't work. It looks really stupid. So they did loads of tests. So he's actually blue if you saw the like regular footage.
It sounds so educational in the nicest
Yeah.
possible way, that it just seems to be that anybody who's interested in filmmaking at any level at
Yeah, and there
all
was
is going to
one.
get something out of that. I wasn't so attracted to WandaVision as a series, but I'm beginning to get more attracted to it. But I
Yeah,
definitely think I'm
stick
going
through
to
the
watch
first
the
couple of episodes being
documentary.
strange. It's worth it. But one super quick thing that I'd never realised in black and white TV, that the actresses would wear blue lipstick, because in black and white, blue looks red. And I was like, that's
Well,
so interesting. I had no idea.
Well, I studied black and white film at university and I still had no idea. But I think anybody who's got a young person doing qualifications this year, I know Eve Smith, who's our current intern, was able with her, I think both at school actually and at college, if you was doing performance studies, drama or film, it's become very, very common to have a week where you go overseas, you go over to the States, and on the West Coast, there's lots of these studios that are also educational complexes. So it's tourism, really, but it's educational tourism. And I know that all of these colleges and schools have considered it really critical as part of their achievement in the exams. So given that nobody's going anywhere, it seems to me that something like these making of documentaries, because you were saying that Marvel's done them about other things as well, and I believe I've seen on Disney Plus other documentaries about the making of films. But yeah, I think if you've got anybody who's doing exams or whatever purports to be exams in terms of assessments at 16 and 18 in film or performance, yeah, I would say that I'll definitely be recommending those through our Youth Together program as well.
May I just pick up your point, Josh, about the lipstick? It used to be back in the day when cameras were not quite so technically advanced, and black and white film used in cameras for photographs was quite normal and quite standard. That a red filter over the lens intensifies the contrast between white and black. So I'm not at all surprised by what you're saying, but I think it's worth perhaps us looking at this another time, how filters actually impact on colors and images.
Yes, and it makes me wonder whether for example, in Photoshop, because if I do something in black and white, I tend to film it in color and then change it. But I wonder in these systems whether you do just take the color out, or whether they do have some filters that kind of actually sensible enough to do things like kind of darken the reds and so on. So yes, that is very interesting. But moving on, although we will be talking more about film later, and in particular today's new Oscar nominations, Robin, what did you do at the weekend?
Well, normal stuff of getting up late, I wish, and land work. But in terms of kind of the really interesting stuff, I had decided that I would like to do some live gigs in the future. Lots of people are doing them. I was thinking, I played all these songs, pretty much once a week over the last year, but actually surprisingly out of practice. It's very different. One song is different to doing a set. Anyway, and I thought, so how am I going to do that? And I thought, well, I'm going to go YouTube live and have a go. So, during last week, I investigated what I needed to do to go live on YouTube, so that I could do a test gig. I didn't promote it or put any adverts up or stuff. It was really certainly in the first instance just to see if I could make it all work. And the first thing I found that was really interesting, and fundamental to it, is that you have to use Google Chrome to go to use YouTube Live.
Which I reckon is because Google bought YouTube. It drives us mad because we've got about 6 passwords and, well, 6 accounts that are all now with Google because they were all with separate organizations that have been bought out by Google. And then they go, oh, I'm not sure whether this is your identity or that's your identity. And you think, because I still do all of the uploading through Safari. Google, YouTube does work for quite a lot of content generation, but clearly not live.
Yeah. So, and it took, and again, just as a word of warning, if you are thinking, oh, great, yeah, I've got Google Chrome, I've got YouTube, bang, let's go. You actually have to validate so you have to have your own YouTube channel, but then to make it live, you then have to do a validation process, which is nothing more really than ticking a couple of boxes. There was nothing physical to do it. It was you kind of letting them know that you want to take upgrade your account to a live account. I didn't have to start paying a YouTube premium or anything like that. It was just really, I guess, for the system to acknowledge that I was then going to go live.
Yeah, I mean, Chrome, just to clarify for anybody who's not aware, Chrome is completely free. YouTube is completely free, not just to watch, but to upload to. But yes, I think they have to add a specific bit of code to your account.
Okay. And then, I mean, the stuff that is actually probably a little bit harder was then working out what routes to plug microphones and guitars in, so that I got a signal of everything I wanted to go as in one kind of signal into the computer, which would then go to YouTube. So that took a little bit of playing with and making sure that I'd got it right, which ironically then made everything wrong for the show, kind of. So thankfully,
But can I just clarify again for anybody who doesn't have to worry about how they recable their studio, but simply has a laptop or a phone? I mean, you can do this process just on your phone, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah, you can do it on your phone. I mean, I could have used the camera and the mic that are built into my computer. Just having access to proper microphones and things, you just hoping that you get that little bit better signal put through it. But then actually going live, because I opened it up and it went, you've got to validate. Have you done that? I ticked yes. I was thinking, oh, it is going to work. And it literally said, are you ready to go live? And I clicked yeah, and boom, there I was live on YouTube. And I'm going, Josh, get YouTube up. Find out if I'm there. Am I real? And I was.
He was.
And I'd just like to add a couple of tips for anybody who's thinking of trying it. You can set it to different things, including private. So it is possible to do test recordings. You don't have to make your first recording live for anybody who happens to stumble across it. There are ways that you can just test things out. But I think also nobody's going to know, nobody's going to suddenly light on your channel if it's a brand new channel. You can do a bit of practice without worrying too much. I think the single most useful thing, if you are, say, using a laptop, is to have a microphone you can plug in. And I know, again, I was working with Eve Smith last week on her drama school applications, and that was the thing that we identified. And in fact, the microphone that Julie's using is one you recommended to us. I might put the link up, actually. It's what's called a podcasting pack. So what's great about these mics is you can plug them straight into a USB point with the supplied cable, or you can put them, as we do, through a mixing desk using the standard cables. And in days of COVID, if you are a performer, at whatever level, it can also be really useful to have your own microphone to take out. I'm sure everybody will be swapping microphone covers in the same way that our microphones have got little coloured covers on. But if you want to be really safe, get your own microphone. And of course, the other advantage with a plug-in microphone is it doesn't pick up everything in the same way that it doesn't pick up the noise of the fan in your laptop. It doesn't pick up the noise of the bin men outside, or the cats crashing around, or the dogs barking. So if you're going live, it's really good to have a microphone that's not picking up too much. And for all of those cat fans, the cat that keeps jumping on us at the moment is Leonardo, who is 3 and semi-long-haired. And like all of the cats here, my 3 and Julie's 2, which are here temporarily, they're all rescue cats. So if you were thinking of getting a pet and you still haven't, go along to your local rescue centre. Don't even think about getting an animal off the internet. So I think that moves us on nicely to our special weekly update, where we talk about all things app related. I have a pile of apps to recommend, but unfortunately Leo is currently stretched across them and my schedule. So Josh, we wanted to start because we're going to look at some personal safety apps, and Leo's on my printout, so I'm going to ask if you're able to tell us a little bit. Sorry, he's just eating cables, about how you use your iPhone in an emergency, because I had no idea till I saw this article last week, and Robin tells me you know how to do it.
Yeah. So there's 3 different ways of doing it technically. If you have an iPhone 7 or earlier, if you press the kind of power button, the button on the top 5 times quite quickly, it will bring up a screen, and then it will say like SOS emergency, and you swipe that and it'll automatically call 999 or whichever relevant emergency number for wherever you are in the world. If you have an iPhone 8 or later, if you hold the power button and one of the volume buttons, and you hold it, it will then bring, just like if you were to turn off your phone, it will bring up and have like slide to turn off, like a medical ID thing, and then it will also have a slide to dial emergency services. But what you can also do, if you just keep holding it, it will activate an auto countdown. So it starts at 5 and counts down. So 5 and 4 are silent, and then 3, 2, 1, it plays a loud alarm. Now I'm going to do this, and I'll only do it once because I don't want to accidentally phone the police. But hang on, can you see you hold? It does that. And then if you keep holding it, on when it counts down for the last 3, it will then automatically phone emergency services for you.
And I was really impressed that in both cases, although with the sort of less than 8, you've got to make the call physically, it pings your location straight over to emergency services.
It does, yeah. So exactly yeah, it will automatically send kind of where you are, as well as phoning. What it will also do, if you have any emergency contacts set up in your phone, which you just kind of highlight somebody's emergency or add them as an emergency contact, what it will also do when it ends the call is it will automatically text your emergency contacts where you are, that you've made an emergency SOS call, and the time you made the emergency SOS call, as well as with the location, which is a very useful thing that it does. So obviously we're talking about it in terms of personal safety, with kind of recent things in the news, but even if you've fallen at home, or
well, exactly, there's
so many other ways it can be, even if you're out and you're doing first aid, you can very easily, you just hold the 2 buttons on the side of your phone. You don't need to do anything else, and you'll automatically phone the emergency services and tell them where you are.
Can I just say, about 15 months ago, a young woman was assaulted in Manchester, and she used that facility. and it gave off. She just kept holding it down to the side of her, and it gave off the screech. The man who was assaulting her jumped
Julie,
off.
we don't talk about
Sorry,
violence on
but
this show, thank you.
It works
but yes,
well.
I know it does work.
Yeah, it does work well.
So that's great. Now, what I'm not clear about is what functions similarly on the Android.
From what I can tell, you can set up that on your lock screen it will have an emergency SOS call. So you can just kind of press that button or swipe that button, and it will allow you to call 999 or 911 or whatever the other numbers are, without having to unlock it or anything. I don't believe it will automatically call like it will on the more recent iPhones, from what I can tell.
I was going to say, I can add to that.
Oh, sorry, Robin.
Yeah,
go
no.
on.
But then I know you're going to move on to apps, and some of the apps there's one called One Scream, which is a very specific app to circumstance. But the difference actually is that on the Android, it that records the audio of everything that's then going on as well. So once you're in that call, rather than it just sending out the call, it stays open, and so if there were a need to have a record of what has gone on, actually it's been recorded as well.
Yes, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for having more than one of these apps on the phone. But I just wanted to explain in terms of the iPhone, and again, it's very similar with the Android, you can set up a specific emergency contact or contacts. And the way you do that is there's a health app, which is included on the iPhone. And that is now where you find your emergency contact. So it's easy. It's always good in any list of phone numbers to put ICE in front of one, which means in case of emergency, ICE. And so that will all, because if people find your phone, for example, or you're taken ill, that's what people will do. They'll search through the contacts to find the ICE contact. But to set up for this iPhone system to work, you have first got to put your emergency contacts in, and that requires you to use the health app.
Yeah, I know that on. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I know that on iPhone, if you do the same thing, you hold those buttons. Before above where you can slide for the SOS, it's got something called medical ID, which again you can swipe. It will, if you've got emergency contacts, it will list the emergency contacts. And then also, for example, if you did get, you get taken into hospital, a doctor can look at your phone and see, if you fill it all in, your name, your emergency contacts. If you know your blood type, you can put it in.
Yeah, let's not go
like
right off the topic again, because we've only got 2 minutes left now, and I wanted to get back to personal safety. But yes, there's all sorts of things that you can fill in as well in health apps that help people in an emergency. And I think Josh is really right to bring it up, because we've got so much less support around us as disabled people at the moment, that the usual people who might step in and provide information don't necessarily have it. So I'm just going to pick out a few. There's something called Shake to Safety, which again I think is particularly useful if you have, if you haven't got the iPhone, because of the iPhone functionality. But what it does is it's what you were saying, Robin. It will record the audio and video, and it will send emergency messages to a contact. And you can do things like pressing your power button 4 times or shake your phone, which is why it's called Shake to Safety, because it can be kind of more subtle just to shake your phone than to be pressing something. There's a really interesting one called Circle of 6, and you choose 6 contacts, and that's your circle of safety. And it says with just 2 taps, you can let people know where you are, which is obviously through the kind of GPS and what you need. And then Safe to Be Safe, again, has an SOS button that you can activate by touch or by voice, records your surroundings, lets you invite your contacts to follow you rather from GPS. And it's got a feature called Fake Call, where you can get your phone to call you with a fake call to get you out of an uncomfortable situation. And Life 360 is very similar to Circle of 6, where you make a circle of trusted contacts where you can keep checking their location, they can keep checking yours, you can leave messages for each other. And particularly if it's a group of you, who are going out, you can set that up as a group. And finally, although it's not technically an app, there's a website called KiteString. And if you text KiteString to say, check in with me at such and such a time, and it can't get you to reply, it will then contact the emergency number that you've given it. So really simple system. All of those will be on our highlights and links page later this afternoon, along with the other apps that we've been talking about. Did anyone have a final word on App Day? Julie?
No, I just think it's important to see what's out there that you can use on your own phone. There's no point looking at an iPhone app if you've got an Android phone.
Yeah.
So, check what's out there, because there does seem to be quite a large selection.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of these apps will work on both systems.
I was just going to say that one thing that we haven't said, and I get just check with each app, but a lot of these apps, the phone doesn't have to be unlocked. So that's an important, you just do it. You do that shake or you hold those buttons.
Yeah, that's absolutely critical to mention, and that you don't need the internet. That these are things that will run on your phone's own data. So, they will literally work anywhere.
Yeah.
So, very exciting. The Oscar nominations have just been announced, and for once, yes, for once, they are much more diverse than usual. I've actually written a feature on diversity, more in British film, but disability diversity, which I think is going in this week's Disability Arts Online, which is really following up the things that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago when I was at Glasgow Film Festival chairing a panel on diversity. But it's just very good timing to suddenly have this whole slate of nominations. So, Julie, what is the latest for people who haven't seen the news?
There's, I think, 2 women who are nominated for Best Director.
Yes, and there's only ever been one nominated at a time
Yeah.
before now. So the fact that there's actually 2 women nominated is a big deal.
I think they're both women of colour as well. So that's also notable. It's an interesting selection of actors up for Best Actor, Actress, Supporting Actor, Actress, and so on and so forth. Again, it is actually quite diverse. I wonder, though, when it comes down to the awards, what the outcome will be. I think it's brilliant that the nominees have such a wide range, but I want to see what the outcomes will be.
Well, there is that. I mean, I'm just looking at The Guardian, who've got a very good article on the nominations already. And apparently, in the past, only 5 women have ever been nominated for Best
Wow.
Director. And one woman, Catherine Bigelow for The Hurt Locker, has only one woman in all these years of filmmaking history has won an Oscar. So, what's particularly interesting too is Emerald Fennell, who's one of the women, is British. And her film, let me see, it's a rape revenge comedy, Promising Young Woman. It didn't actually seem very funny to me when I was reading the descriptions, but I can see that it's a sort of, as they say, a black comedy. And it's also up for Best Film, Best Original Screenplay, and Carey Mulligan has got Best Leading Actress. Now, I haven't found anything either that nominates somebody for cripping up to play a disabled person or a disabled actor who's been nominated, but we don't know.
Crip Camp is up for Best Documentary.
Oh, is it? I
Yeah.
hadn't seen that. The documentaries always get squeezed out of
They
the
do,
articles, don't they?
yes,
Thank you
yes.
for researching that. Well, that's great news. So tell us a bit more about Crip Camp.
I haven't seen it. I think the guys have.
No, we haven't seen it either. I remember it came out and we're like, oh, we should definitely watch that. And then it's kind of been sitting in the
Must
queue.
watch
It
box,
certainly
yeah.
looks really interesting. And I think, it was directed by disabled woman. I think Michelle Obama was one of the executive producers. But yeah, no, it looks very interesting. Just haven't got around to watching it yet. I think
Yeah.
like yourselves.
And I mean, I was looking because I was on the way back from the school run this morning. I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about kind of possible nominations and stuff. So I was looking, and a film which isn't a Crip film, as it were, but does look really interesting. And I haven't seen the nominations, but there's a film called Judas and the Black Messiah,
Yeah, it was nominated.
which if I'd had time before like this morning, I was going to watch it, but it's still 15 quid on Amazon, and I didn't.
Too cheap.
I used my film budget on something I'm going to talk about in a minute for this week, but it does look really, really interesting. And I was wondering, they were talking about whether the main actor was going to get nominated.
I don't know.
I'm not sure they have, because what they've done is listing the non-white, but 9 of the acting nominees are non-white compared to 1
All right, Daniel Kaluuya.
last year. So the non-white ones who are nominated are Riz Ahmed for The Sound of Metal, Stephen Yeun for Minari, Chadwick Boseman, of course, for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and the other 2, I think, are Anthony Hopkins and somebody Oldman. So perhaps they didn't get into that. But again, 9 acting nominees, non-white. I think as well, I want to know what's going to happen next year. I mean, one of the reasons that I was invited to Glasgow Film Festival and to write this feature this week for Disability Arts Online is about 18 months ago. I did a piece about diversity in film, and I won't go back over what we were talking about last week, but some people were not happy with the article. They contacted Disability Arts Online and said, oh, no, it's so unfair. The British Film Institute are doing wonderful things. Wait till next year. And of course, we got to this year and there were no nominees, nobody funded at all in, I think it was debut director and production funding, and I think there was sort of 1% of development funding went to disabled people. So I think the Oscars have done well, but let's see who actually gets the awards, and let's see how many people are actually nominated next year. I mean, I'd love to see Chadwick Boseman get it, of course, and I think a lot of us would.
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, the other film that has done brilliantly is Nomadland, and which is France's. Anybody?
Oh no, not.
I'm just joking. Ignore me.
Okay, well,
dear me.
Well, in that case, I'm just going to have to. Frances McDormand for Nomadland, and Viola Davis, who's in Ma Rainey, Andra Day, who's in The United States versus Billie Holiday, and Vanessa Kirby, who's in Pieces of Woman. And then, of course, there's Carey Mulligan and Frances McDormand for Best Actress. So I think women, people of colour, and indeed disabled people, by the sound of it, have got a much higher profile this year.
Oh, that's great. Really good. I mean, and shall I move on to talking about Poly Styrene now?
You can indeed. I know you're itching to tell us about Poly Styrene, but I just wanted to add that I think it's really interesting to compare the Golden Globes a couple of weeks ago, where I think the Golden Globes ceremony was a fortnight ago, just before Glasgow, and you saw Sia's film Music, which is just as we said at the time, it's a rubbish script, and it involves a lot of cripping up, but it's just such an unconvincing story with such an unconvincing performance if you know anything about autism. And yet that had 2 nominations in the Golden Globes. So I think it's interesting to see where, when the Academy takes things seriously, that produces results, but just sort of sitting there and making wishy-washy promises don't seem to achieve anything.
No. Okay, so I'm moving. Not moving. Just continuing. Really, is that I and Tracy, in fact, sat down yesterday morning to watch a film called Poly Styrene. I Am a Cliche. Now we're not talking about bits of stuff they wrap televisions in to post, to deliver, not post. But Poly Styrene was a singer in a band called X-Ray Specs, who were really, really big around the kind of 76, 77, 78 punk scene. Although they weren't necessarily a punk band, we won't get into the nuances of that. But basically, the film is a biography told by Poly Styrene's daughter, and it delves a lot into their relationship, and how having a mum who was a pop star affected her, but also, and I think I was I can't recommend it as a film at the moment because it's really, really intensely sad. And I think that's an important thing to say, that, it's, if you're having a blue time in any way with all this lockdown, both Tracy and I were really, really affected by the film yesterday. And that's saying a lot really for me as well.
And I think it was actually premiered at Glasgow, because I know it was in competition, or I don't know if they have a competition, but it was at Glasgow,
It
wasn't
was
it?
at Glasgow, and I think, but what I wanted to say about it is, I mean, certainly from a women's perspective, she was an incredibly strong character. She was the first um uh person of color to front a kind of rock punk band as a female. Um, she'd had her own art stuff. Her poetry is incredible. Her drawing is really good. And in the very brief, I mean, she basically created the band X-Ray Specs. She just was like, I'm not having what goes on in my life to be ruled by how I'm seen because of my skin color, how I'm seen because of my gender, how I'm seen because of the clothes that I choose to wear. I mean, she was an absolute fashion one-off. She made all her own clothes, but in the most um, idiosyncratic way. It was so individual, her styling. But what she did do, and she influenced people like Vivienne Westwood, with her styling. So, and she was only like 20 at this point in time and had this massive kind of influence. And the film was put together it was a lot of collages. There was footage of the band playing. There were some footages of like kind of still shots with voiceovers that were original voiceovers, and then voiceovers that were diary entries but done by someone with a kind of very similar Brixton-y accent. um, and then lots of stills bolted together, and it was and then real sort of um, reflective moments. And actually, I mean, whilst it was intensely sad, as I said, there was also a
I was going
huge,
to say, Robin, am I right in thinking she experienced mental health
yeah.
difficulties?
So basically at the height of their fame, she had a complete breakdown, and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And then that was how she was originally treated. But in fact, that just made things worse because it turned out that her real diagnosis was bipolar disorder, which explained some of the kind of the polarization of her moods, for example, but which had been put down to schizophrenia. And yet she worked through that. She was, and put into, she got sectioned and came out and carried on with the band and did stuff. But it kind of really, um, because of the kind of world she was challenging, she's famous for a song called Bondage, Up Yours, which is about the whole essence of bondage. Not the bondage as in uh, the punks wearing straps to their trousers with safety pins, but the whole idea that we have to live under rules and rules that hold us in our place. And she was particularly against patriarchy or male domination, even, and experienced huge amounts of that, and that was what she had to rally against all the way through her music career. And she ended up, I suppose I'm not giving it away because um, her life story is out there. There is a book that came out about 5 years before. So her daughter was left her. So Polystyrene, um, ultimately succumbed to cancer, which started as breast cancer and then took her out. Um, and then her daughter was left with this legacy that she then had to do something with, and then was not only dealing with, like lots of people at the moment, bereavement, but actually she felt that she had to curate her mum's legacy. So there is, and then so there's this kind of huge journey that takes you through, you know, from when she was a little girl and you know, being breaking out of her own bathroom window to meet social workers to leave her mum at 8 or something like that, to how they actually reconciled, right, you know, in later life. So there were, then that's kind of why some of that sadness is there, because there is these kind of ongoing reconciliations that happen.
Yeah, it sounds like a film that a lot of women in particular are going to find some things in common with,
Yeah.
though. And, you know, sadly, those experiences for women with mental health difficulties are not uncommon. But thank you for that, Robin. Moving on, we have just got time. I know Josh has found a website called TuneFine. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, so Tune Find it's something that I came across a while ago. We seem to watch TV that has really good soundtracks in it. Um, so what it does is basically for films and television programs. So for TV series, it'll break it down by series and then episode. And basically, it'll tell you what the songs are in that show, and kind of the timestamp that it happens, and a little bit of like context of the scene. So that if you can't remember what it was, you can be like, oh yeah, it was the scene when Claire was buying milk or whatever. You can be like, oh yeah, it was this song. But I quite like it. Every now and again, if I listen to something and there's a really good song, I'll just grab my phone and use Shazam and find out what it is. But if you're watching a show that has good music, you don't want to every 30 seconds grabbing your phone to hold it at the screen, because it completely takes you out of what you're listening to. I really like it that you can
Stop
very.
you for a sec, Josh, and say I've never used Shazam, so just tell us, is that what it does? That you launch the app and hold it at the phone and it tells you what you're hearing?
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of one button. You press it, it listens to whatever's going on around you, and then says, "Oh, it's this song." And if you had it linked up to things like Apple Music, it will then automatically add that to your music library, which is
And
really
charge your
good.
credit card.
Which is great 9 times out of 10. But sometimes when you're out and you're like, "What is this song?" You end up with some really weird things. It's also a good excuse if like One Direction comes on, you can blame it on Shazam, and not that you really like History by One
I
Direction.
mean, obviously, the biggest thing about Shazam is that actually it plays it recognizes songs by Angry
Yeah,
Fish.
he's really happy because it picks him up on it if you Shazam him.
Got a really broad range.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, you know, if you're watching something that has lots of music in it, you don't want to be doing that because you stop watching the show and you just sit there on your phone. I mean, I do that anyway, but it's just it's a cool website to be able to kind of, or even if it's like, you know, you watch something a few years ago and you remember it having good music, you don't have to go and dig out a DVD from the back of the cupboard. You can just be like, oh, search whatever, and be like, oh, so it was this, and this song. And I think you can listen to it, or at least samples through the website, I believe, or I know you can for some of them. So also you can be like, was it this song? Oh yes, it was. And then you can, you know, search it on your phone or whatever and add it. But it's just a cool little kind of tool for
Yeah,
picking up music.
and I can't help thinking as well, if you're making a film at home and stuck for ideas, that sometimes it can just be good to go, well, my film's not a million miles away from this film.
Yeah.
What kind of music did they pick? You know, how did they create that kind of ambience? You know, it can be a sort of, yeah, I think it could be very useful like that as well.
Absolutely. I was watching a new detective show last night called Grace, and I was noticing how they used violins to generate tension within the storyline. And I think being able to identify films that you can go to for reference and learn from is really useful.
Yes, because there's certainly, I mean, you might not even have seen the film, but you might go through a list and go, well, these films look like the kind of thing I'm aiming to make. Or even at the research stage, if you're thinking about, I'm doing a grant application to the Arts Council at the moment, and you've got to have your project plan and you've got to know who your partners are and so on. Maybe find who's composed the music on one project. That's another good way of linking up with somebody who might be able to do the music on your project. You could even come across Angry Fish.
Angry fish.
Yeah, there's no quality filter.
Well, I was going to say always available for commission. We're coming towards the end of the show, so I just wanted to flag up what's on our website and what's coming up later in the week. On our website, there are two things of particular interest, we hope. One is the details of our club's programme. That runs on weekday mornings, not every weekday morning, but when they take place, they're on weekday mornings on Zoom or by phone. Everything we do is free. The clubs are open to disabled people and whoever you want to have with you, wherever you are in the world, so long as you can access them on Zoom between 11 and 12. British Greenwich Mean Time, British Summertime comes up in about 2 weeks' time. We're still trying to check that one out. So on Wednesday, we have our regular features, including the Clockwork Paralympics, virtual nature watch with Merlot the assistance dog, where we all join Merlot for a walk through the very changing landscape of the Norfolk woods at the moment, isn't it? We have our Clockwork Paralympics, and we forgot to do the audio description for our teddy bear. But each week, both of us put up a new teddy bear and we compete for the right of that teddy bear to wear a medal. The bears themselves, or that doesn't look quite like a bear, but they say it is, so we're not arguing. So the bears are taking part in the International Virtual Bear Hunt, but we race our Clockwork toys. You can also join in from home by choosing one side of the screen or the other before we start. But most importantly, as I'm sure Julie would say, we have poems from the Pop-Up Poetry Club, which takes place on a Wednesday morning. We read those poems out in the afternoon. You can join in from home. The theme this week is... Is it a winter coat, Julie? Or was that last week? We'll put the theme up on highlight links. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a problem with the poetry club last week because, as I recall, the phone system went down, so we might just have to double check that one. And you'll have a sports and gaming report for us, won't you, Josh?
I shall, yes. Hopefully there'll be some more news and I can actually talk about some of this week.
Oh, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I have seen bits and pieces. So
yeah. Well, you're in your sailing gear because you've been hunched over YouTube at the America's Cup down in New Zealand, haven't you?
I have. It's been thrilling.
It has literally, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's match racing with these incredibly high-tech boats, isn't it? For anybody who hasn't seen it, where would they find it on YouTube?
America's Cup on YouTube. They've got their own channel. And it is gripping. It's really gripping. The boats are 75 foot long. Can you imagine it? And they're sort of scooting around on little hydrofoils. Amazing.
it's a big boat.
It's a big, big boat and massive speeds. Really fast.
I have to check that
Yeah,
out.
it's very much 21st century racing, and it's also the kind of thing that's so much more fun to enjoy from the sofa. It's not the kind of thing where you go, oh, I really wish I was there in these high seas being thrown around.
Yeah.
It's a lot warmer at home.
Those Southern Ocean storms, I miss them so much.
Yes, I mean, I only used to dinghy race, but I still used to find, particularly on the wilder occasions, that reliving it afterwards was wonderful. When you were actually trapped under the boat, or if I came out, I never had the upper body strength to get back in again, so I always had to be rescued. And when you're sort of waiting, slightly humiliated to be hoiked out of the water again, but you get home. Oh, it was wonderful! It was wonderful! It was wonderful. So this way, you escape the water. You just watch it on YouTube. So with that, I think we'll draw this episode to a close and join Arwa as we always do to relax with Arwa. Do you have any final words for us, anybody?
No, thank you for being with us today.
Enjoy relaxing.
Yeah, thank you as always for joining us. The highlights and links will be up about 5, and the edited version of this show, we don't take anything out apart from any visual glitches, and we just check the sound, and then that should be up by about 7 o'clock. But in the meantime, let's relax with Awa.
So you are that in your world, and you are to and that your mom is in your world, and you're showing her around. You're showing her around, and you are really happy to see your mom. And it's wonderful. And you're showing her around the island. And then you are showing her the totem power. You're showing her the totem power. And she feels relaxed. And very calm. And it's very nice to have your mom in your life. And tomorrow is Mother's Day. So if I was you, I would call my mom and wish her a happy birthday. Now, in your world, you are sitting with your mom on, laughing, you're joking, you're having fun with your mom. Isn't that nice? Take a deep breath in and out. You and your mom go into the sea of happiness. The sun is shining and the water feels nice on your skin. And take a deep breath in and you reach to an island of waterfalls and you take your mom to the highest mountain. It's taller than you are. And you watch over. You look down and and it's nice to have your mum there, isn't it? So like to have your mum there. Take a final deep breath in and out.